Hello, my name is Sean Tyner, and I'm going to be talking about experiential education and how it is better than a traditional classroom versus experiential education outside the classroom and inside. So, experiential education. Traditional education is failing students. I think Will Smith said it best. The thing that has been most valuable to me, I did not learn in school. Traditional education is based off facts and figures and passing tests, not on comprehension or the material but application to life. Experimental education is the way Jesus taught his apostles. Jesus did not lecture them on what he wanted to do. He led by example, and he taught them his everyday life and told them to follow him, so they learned all the teachings from him. Herman Eddibos created the learning curve that states, during a lecture, if your absorption rate is over 100%, then day one, there's a 50 to 80% loss of learning from the second day onward, which is reduced to the retention rate of 2 to 3% on the end of the 30th day. So this is explaining that once you are on the 100%, if you learn 100% of the material on the very first day, that you're just going to keep on dwindling in classical education because you're not taking, like, say, you're not learning notes, or you're not really understanding and going back over them that you're actually trying to learn. And then in experiential education, you're learning this and it's absorbing a lot more than what you should in a traditional classroom because you're experiencing it. And through experience, you gain a lot more knowledge retained from going through the situation than if you weren't. So then, in experiential education, retention rate is highly increased because it's using critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making to accelerate learning. In outdoor leadership, we use this a lot of experiential education because you can learn by the way that you're teaching, by hands-on learning. You can also read how to light a camp stove, but without learning, without hands-on experience, and seeing when there is enough lighter fluid to spark the wick, you will not be able to have a hard time doing it, but you'll also not be able to even see what you're doing. In classical education, most classes information is taught led by a facilitator, while experimental education, a facilitator is the overseer of the entire group, so that doesn't just completely lead it, but just jumps in when it needs to be led into a certain way or something. A great example of this program is called Outward Bound, and the creator Kurt Hahn, one of the founders of exponential learning, created a world-renowned college called Gordonstown. Gordonstown teaches you about the different zones and comfort and the different comfort zone, the stretch zone, and the panic zone. So the comfort zone is like being in the classroom, and you're kind of not just introduced to different elements that is going to put you into the stretch zone. So then the panic zone is when you're doing something that's going to completely scare you, just like if you're going to go skydiving, cliff jumping, rock climbing for some people, or just being in a classroom when you see the alphabet in math, when you're not kind of just used to it, and you see that x squared or b squared, whatever, and you just get scared. And then outside of that, you're in stretch zone and exponential education because you have a bunch of people that you're going to talk to, but you're not talking in front of a class and getting kind of scared of what you're doing, but you're talking more into like a peer, so you have different knowledge and different debriefs of what you're going to get from different people. So I can't even talk. Experiential education is always getting criticized for being in an uncontrolled environment, but without having experience, observations, conceptualization, and experimentation to grow to its fullest ability. So, meaning by that is that without experiences and observations, that you really don't learn to your fullest capability, because through experience and observation, you're learning from peers around you, and you get to observe what's happening, and you get the experience of actually going through the processes before you're actually trying to set them down and just read them and then try to do them. You're actually having multiple errors, trial and errors that you could actually learn. And then you get into more of a experimentation. So that's when the trial and errors come in, and you get to experiment what works best for you, and it really just works just completely better than classical education. Then experimental education breaks down the traditional education and lets the facilitator speak less and have students lead conversations to get everyone involved. I think this is why experimental education is a lot better than the classical education, because it teaches you beyond the limits of what you could actually just dream of learning in a classroom. So 1 second.
Yeah.